Another week has gone by in college football, and another top 25 ranking is upon us. Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host, as always, Marcus. Mason's not with us. He is out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, having a good old time. I hope you're having a good time out there, buddy, but I cannot wait for you to be back because this is a lot harder than it looks. You got to do it by yourself. Holy cow, I don't know how some of these guys do it. I guess I got producers and stuff, but not here at the First and Long College Football Show. It is all ass and elbows here, and that's just how we like it. Working hard here for getting ready for another week of college football. We're headed into week 5. I wanted to come and bring you guys the top 25 updated. We're getting to that point in the season, though. I want to preface this before I put it up on the screen. We're getting to the point in the season where we've got some teams that are undefeated that I'm not so sure that they're going to hang around in the top 25 as the year goes on. A lot of teams have played nothing but non-Power 5 teams. There's some teams that have played nothing but non-Power 4 teams. Ohio State being one of those. So there's a lot of moving up and down on this thing, and a lot of this stuff's going to sort itself out. I mean, specifically at the top of the list here, you got several teams that are going to play one another there in the top 5 as the season goes on. So a couple of them are playing this week, as a matter of fact, between Georgia and Alabama. So a lot of this stuff is going to work itself out. Some of it is, it's our opinion versus the AP. I don't like the AP poll. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a huge poll guy to begin with, but you guys love watching the top 25 breakdowns, and they are pretty fun to make. But in all honesty, right now, they're not really going to matter until October, but it is fun to kind of map out what's going on, and especially for the teams there, like in the top 10, 15 area that have a chance to go to the college football playoff. You really like to kind of watch all your opponents, right? Watch everybody else, see what they're about, where they're at in the rankings, who you got to play coming up, and so let's get into it here. I'll throw that sucker up on the screen, and we'll start from the top. We typically start from the bottom, but we're going to start from the top today. Texas, we had moved up to number 1 a couple of weeks ago. Texas has dominated every football game that they've played. They've dominated this past week with their backup quarterback, Arch Manning. He threw a couple of interceptions. It was a little bit of a slow start at just over 50%. But you know what? He has no playing experience in real games, and they didn't play a really good team or anything like that. But I've just been really, really impressed with Texas overall. I mean, defensively, offensively, they're some kind of explosive on offense, and it really is something to watch. And Texas and Georgia are going to play, this season. So, I mean, we're going to be able to see that matchup and really feel where those two teams are at. Georgia's going to travel there to Texas later in the season. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff's going to kind of work itself out. Tennessee, we moved up to the number 2 slot this week, and it's pretty easy to see why we did that. Tennessee has played Oklahoma on the road, and while we don't know exactly what Oklahoma is going to be offensively by the end of the season, I think they're kind of at a crossroads right now. That was a good defensive showing from Oklahoma in that football game. They showed up ready to play football on that side of the ball anyway, and Tennessee did exactly what they needed to do. They showed up with a defense of their own. The old saying is, defense travels, right? Well, that was definitely the case this past weekend because Tennessee put Oklahoma in a chokehold the likes I hadn't seen in quite a while. Oklahoma ran the ball for 30-something yards for the game, ended up having to pull their quarterback at halftime. We'll talk more about Oklahoma as we get towards the bottom of the list because they have moved close to out of the top 25. So we'll kind of, they'll have a chance to work their way back up, and they got Auburn this week, and we're going to talk about that game on the Tuesday Night Live show. Reminder, guys, come hang out tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. There'll be a link in the description of the video. You'll be able to come join the video, get on here live with me, and let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. If it's this top 25 ranking, so be it. But really what we're going to be doing tomorrow mostly is going over the big matchups for the week and really going into more of a deep dive on those. So we did kind of our early thoughts on those games. Just released those yesterday. If you missed it, go check it out in the videos portion there on the homepage. We got 4 game breakdowns out already for the week. Well, not game breakdowns, but early thoughts on the game. We'll break them down in their entirety on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. So we hope that you'll join us. Tennessee at number 2. We haven't seen the best out of Tennessee's offense yet. I'm sold on that. I think Tennessee's offense is a grower, not a shower. It's going to take more than 5 minutes to get Nico, where he needs to be in this offense and everybody where they need to be. I mean, come on, we're 5 minutes into the Nico era. So I'm willing to give him a minute. I've seen enough from him to know that this guy has got a chance to be really special. He's not there yet. And I can't expect him to be there yet, and Tennessee fans shouldn't expect him to be all the way there yet either. Luckily, you got one of the best defenses in the country, and that showed this past weekend, and you took care of Oklahoma without a problem. Number 3, Georgia. We've watched Georgia play a handful of games now, struggle with Kentucky. I think a good defensive showing by Kentucky, obviously, in that football game. Georgia, I think Max could have scored 20 points in that game, but they ended up scoring 13 because they bogged the drive down there at the end of the game and decide not to score so that they don't give the ball back to Kentucky with a couple minutes left. That looked bad. It was a really bad day for Georgia's offense in particular. The defense did just fine. But if you really look at Georgia this year, the first game of the year they played Clemson, their offense played 2 good quarters of football, which is the third and the fourth quarter, where Georgia went on like a 30-0 run basically in the second half of that opening weekend game there against Clemson at the neutral site, Mercedes-Benz. And I'm not going to really talk about Tennessee Tech. I mean, offense looked good, I guess, for portions of that game. Obviously, it's Tennessee Tech. And then we had like 1 quarter of decent offense against Kentucky. So you're talking about we've seen, really 3 good quarters of football from Georgia's offense so far this year. I got to see more, and you're going to get an opportunity to see it this weekend as they're going to Tuscaloosa, going to Bryant-Denny Stadium, Nick Saban Field, if you will, and we're going to see what Georgia's made of. Kentucky was able to discombobulate the Georgia offensive line, bring a lot of blitz, a lot of pressure, and look, Georgia ends up with a hurt Tate Ratledge, one of the best offensive guards in the country by pretty much everybody's standards and studies. So there's a lot of questions for Georgia going in this football game. I think Georgia has gotten in some areas getting healthier back on the defensive line. We'll see if Georgia can get Michael Williams back this week. That's going to be huge in this matchup versus Alabama. In Alabama, we got there at number 4. Speaking of them, I think Alabama has got a little bit of momentum right now. They did their thing at Wisconsin. I thought that was like a really, really good tune-up game, right? Wisconsin was like I don't want to poke fun at Wisconsin, so I'll go there. But me and Mason literally laughed about that game the week before because we knew what was about to happen. Let's just say that. Alabama tuned them up, and I felt like the offense looked really, really good. I think Alabama's rushing offense is extremely explosive. You don't have a ton of options at wide receiver. We'll see how that kind of works out against Georgia's secondary this week, which is ranked number 1 in the country by most metrics, and what I think to be the best secondary in the country, them and probably Notre Dame. We'll see what Alabama can do. Alabama wants to run the football anyway, so and we got possibility of some rainstorms. We've got a storm, moving in off the coast, and they're right there in Alabama. We know about the storms that get shared between Alabama and Georgia there on the west side of Georgia and east side of Alabama. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe a wet football game. Can't wait to watch it. We've already got a breakdown on that game out, guys. Please go check it out if you haven't seen it. Ole Miss at number 5. Not much really to say about Ole Miss. Every team that they played, they beat the stew out of them. They haven't played anybody worth a damn. They played Wake Forest, which was a Power 4 team, which is more than what Ohio State can say at this point. But, I can't really be mad at Ole Miss for their schedule at this point. They're going to play some really good teams, but that's why they're at number 5. Ole Miss has a chance to win a national championship, folks. Now, are they going to? Does it mean, that they're going to do that? No. we still got questions about Ole Miss, just like we do everybody on this, in this top five. But anybody in this top five beating anybody else in this top five wouldn't surprise me a bit at this point. And I think you can actually go a little bit farther into the list here, and we'll do that. Number 6, Miami. They're one of those teams. Look, guys, really, to be honest with you, I think there's 10 teams right now that could all beat one another. I think that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of rare in college football. That was one of my biggest beefs going to a 12-team college football playoff this past season. Because every year that we've had a 4-team college football playoff, by the time we got to the playoff, it was obvious who was about to get their doors blown off. So my immediate thought is, so what, we're going to have 3 really good teams in a 12-team playoff, and, that doesn't seem to be the case this year. And maybe it's the transfer portal. You let me know in the comment section. What do you think it is? It seems like there's going to be some really, really even matchups. I don't see really anybody in this top 10 running away from anybody. I mean, there's always a possibility in college football. But anyway, the parity at this point in the season, before all these teams really start playing one another, these top 10 teams, is really kind of crazy. And we're going to learn a lot about these teams over the next few weeks. Miami being one of those. Miami hasn't really played anybody. They went on the road to Florida, and that's kind of their claim to fame so far this year is beating the stew out of the Florida Gators, but that really doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, if you've been watching college football over the last few years, Florida Gators haven't even been to a bowl game in a few years. So, where it was a good win and you went on the road and you got a good win there, Miami does not have any wins really to hang their hat on. They're going to get some opportunities to do so. They don't play Clemson this season. So eventually we're going to get some matchups for them. It's not their fault that Florida sucks and they're in the gutter. That's not Miami's fault. They scheduled the game. They wanted to play it, and Miami went in there and just stopped a mud hole in them and walked it dry. So you can't blame Miami for beating the hell out of every team that they play. They did it to South Florida this past weekend, the same South Florida that Alabama struggled with, right? This Miami team turned the throttle on in the second half and absolutely pounded that team. Cam Ward's going to New York for the Heisman ceremony, folks. I don't know. You're probably not paying a ton of attention to him, but you're going to look up all of a sudden halfway through the season when they finally do have a big game that you want to watch, and you're going to see Cam Ward with all the stats, and him and I believe Jackson Dart as well are 2 of the guys that they're just a shoo-in for New York at this point, barring some type of injury. Ohio State at 7. Ohio State fans will hate this, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're the 7th best team in the country, because I think Ohio State has just as good a chance to win a national championship in 2024 as any team in the country. Their schedule sets up for it, and that's why they're at number 7 right now, because their schedule has been ridiculously easy. They beat something called Marshall this past weekend. I mean, I haven't even really been able to watch Ohio State football a whole lot, just because of the fact that there's so many other good games on that I'm not wasting my time watching Ohio State play, Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf. It's just not going to happen. My college football watching time is a little too valuable right now, so Ohio State is going to have some games. They're going to play Oregon, who's at our number 8 slot here. That's coming up. They're going to play Michigan at the end of the season. Michigan ain't got no offense. Ohio State's going to absolutely bludgeon. I mean, they're just going to beat them to death in that football game. But who knows? A lot can change between now and then. Oregon had a slow start this season. A lot of people were saying, in our early rankings, I think it was like week 3 rankings or something like that, we had Oregon way too high after struggling. And you guys were right. You told us in the comment section, why are you glued to your preconceived notion of this football team? And my immediate reaction was, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing here. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, I guess I am kind of doing that. I mean, they struggled. They struggled. And it is what it is. Not any real great wins to hang your hat on if you're Oregon so far. And you've struggled with, Idaho and Boise State, who Boise State I think is a pretty good team, but I digress. I mean, if you're Oregon and you feel like you're a top 4 team, you shouldn't be struggling with Boise State. No doubt about it. Early in the season, still trying to get things worked out. We're in the age of the transfer portal. It seems like offenses have kind of taken a slow start in most college football conferences to start the year. I think the offenses will ramp it up here as we get deeper into conference play. I think you're going to see a little bit more high-scoring games than what we've seen. I don't think it's going to be. Don't be going and betting over every game, because that's not going to be the case with the running clocks and things. But everybody's kind of getting adjusted to what everybody is. Penn State, number 9, they're going to host Illinois this week. Big favorites at home over Illinois this week. And I think it's for pretty good reason. I don't think Illinois, we're going to talk about them in a few minutes, so I'll just actually save that. But look, Penn State's a wild card to me, guys. I don't know enough about Penn State at this point to say yay or nay for the college football playoff, but they are certainly in the conversation. And every aspect of their football team has been ready to go to a college football playoff, minus the passing game. And so far this year, guys, they've done really well in the passing game. 12.3 yards per pass, which is number 1 in the country. And if you look at Penn State over the last couple of years, they've averaged about half that, about 6 yards per pass. So it seems like Penn State is figuring out a way to get the ball in the air, even though they seem to be pretty depleted as far as the wide receiver room goes, using the tight ends, and they're making it happen. We're going to see what Penn State can do this week against Illinois. I got a bad feeling for Illinois in that football game. I've already done a breakdown on that game. You can go check it out on the videos page. Look, the spread is big for a reason. Last I saw, I think it was 17 points or something like that. Penn State is a good football team. I think their defense took a little bit of a step back from last year. You lose Manny Diaz, you lose some NFL talent there on that defense, but they still got some serious playmakers on the defense. Don't make no mistake about it. And I think the offense is a step better. So watch out for Penn State. I mean, that is a team that certainly you got to include them in the conversation with Ohio State, Oregon, as those 3 teams being in the top of the Big Ten and possibly eyeing a spot at that Big Ten title game and of course the college football playoff. Utah, number 10, great win this past weekend. I think I came off on the show, on the reaction show, I think I came off a little bit like, excuse me, I think I came off like I was blaming Oklahoma State completely for the loss to Utah. And I think it was just because I was really disappointed with Oklahoma State and what we saw from them last week against Utah. Utah doesn't have Cam Rising, runs the ball to the clip of like 250 yards, or I think it might have even been more than that. Utah's a really good football team. I think that the offense without Cam Rising is better this year than it was last year without Cam Rising, if that makes any sense. Everybody knows what happened to Utah last year. I mean, every season, if you look at their last 5 seasons, 10-3, 11-2, whatever, they're 10 wins, 11 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins, beating USC and Oregon out there left and right in the Pac-12. Last year was a step down. Cam Rising gets hurt. You go 8-5, I believe is what it was, 8-4 in the regular season, I think. Not a good look. Without Cam Rising now, it seems like you're able to run the football much more efficiently. Now, only scored 22 points this past week. You need your fearless leader. I was fully expecting Cam Rising to play. Apparently, there was, Vegas knew what was going on with the way the line was moving and everything, but Oklahoma State was not able to pounce on their opportunity because this Utah defense played so solid. Go figure, right? Water wet, fire hot. Utah defense playing solid football. They were out there laying the hammer down in this football game and held Oklahoma State under 50 yards rushing, which made them, in obvious passing downs. And this defense is smart enough to figure out that when you're in an obvious passing down, they know what they need to do. Utah, here's your flowers. Good win. Utah is the toast of the Big 12. There's zero doubt about it in my mind. I already thought that to start the season. The defense looks even better than what I thought. The offensive line specifically looks better than what I thought it would. if you get Cam Rising back, the sky's the limit for Utah, and I include them in one of those 10 teams that can beat anybody as long as you've got Mr. Rising out there and Brant Keithy as well. Oh, wrong way. All right, now here's where the controversy starts, I'm sure, for the most part. We got Louisville at number 11. They shot way up this week. I will admit to you guys that this could go terribly wrong for Louisville this week. Things could go terribly wrong. Notre Dame has a defense, and that's who they're matched up with this week. Louisville on the road, headed to Notre Dame. Won this game last year, Louisville did, 33-20 over Notre Dame, but these two teams are not the same teams at this point. If you look at Louisville statistically, they're top 25 in damn near every category, defensively, offensively, you name it. A couple of stats here and there, but I know what you're saying in your head. Yeah, but who have they played? And you're right. They're one of those teams. We're at a part in the season where they haven't really played anybody, and that's about to change this week. Notre Dame, say what you want to say about Notre Dame, they're a formidable opponent. And that defense is nothing to F around with. So we're going to find out a lot about Louisville this week. We definitely are. They're going to try to throw the ball on this secondary some. You know, they're going to try to mix it up, obviously, but they're going to try to test this Notre Dame secondary unlike they've been tested all season. So I'm really interested to see how both of these teams react in that situation. I'm thinking it's going to be a rock fight. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. But my whole point is, with Louisville, right now I see them as kind of like either a second or third place team in the ACC right now. It's between them and Clemson. Miami at the top, Clemson, Louisville somewhere below that, and then everybody else, I think. Now, you know, you never know. ACC, we've seen years where one of the teams that goes to the championship has got a couple of losses. There's no divisions anymore, so, you know, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but we're going to see. I'm on Louisville this week, guys. I think Louisville can take out Notre Dame. I think the defense is good enough to be able to limit Notre Dame's run game, which is really, really good. Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love are running the ball really well, but Notre Dame's kind of banged up on the offensive line, so we'll see how they react to that as well. As of right now, I've got Louisville at number 11, and you can thank some of these other teams that have struggled or lost. Louisville hasn't lost a football game, and so, you know, at some point we have to honor the victories on the field, and in other cases we have to honor the losses and move people down. We can't be married to our preconceived notions in the offseason, and I'm trying to move away from that. It's hard to do because, I mean, any individual that makes a ranking, you're going to have some type of bias built into it. But I try to be as fair as possible on this. And Louisville, that could be a team of contention, and I could understand you having an argument on that one. But we're going to find out this weekend. They'll either kind of hang out where they're at or move up just a hair, or they're going to fall way out and get embarrassed there by Notre Dame. Michigan at number 12. I hate Michigan being at number 12. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't love this football team. I thought USC was going to be able to, which stupidly of me, I thought USC was going to be able to hold up on the lines of scrimmage a little bit better against Missouri. I thought USC played a lot better second half than they did the first half. I think the first half was like a perfect example of what culture shock on a football field looks like. USC walked into the big house, and I mean, it was almost like they were surprised that all the seats were filled. You know, USC's used to playing in front of 75% filled stadiums. You know, tough environment there. Michigan has no offense. Threw the ball for 30-something yards. USC should really be ashamed of themselves losing that football game. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. Michigan went absolutely bully mode and bullied USC around. Every time I turned around, a USC player was limping off the field. Michigan was playing mean, ferocious on offense, defense, and blowing up the lines of scrimmage, and that's where you get that victory. And USC, you allow Michigan, one of the worst offenses in the country, to go 90-something yards on you at the end of that game. Field goal is no good in this situation. You've got to score a touchdown. and you allow them to do so and take the lead and win 27-24. I kind of just explained Michigan and USC, who USC is our number 14 team here. But yeah, I think USC's got potential, and look, I do think the defense is a little better this season. D'Anton Lynn has got the guys in better position, but he still ain't got the Jimmies and Joes that he needs. And defensively, it's more than just a one-year fix, you know. So Lincoln Riley fans or haters, you know, I think you're going to have to wait just a little bit, and hopefully D'Anton Lynn will hang around the Southern Cal program and be able to recruit the players that he wants and be able to instill more of a defensive culture there at USC. But right now they're too soft, just too soft to be able to compete for a championship. Number 13, Missouri. Missouri's been flirting with disaster, and I think they go into a bye week this week after the scare that they had hosting Vanderbilt last week. I mean, we talked about it in the reaction show, so I won't go like crazy deep on this, but this Missouri offense has been a little bit of a disappointment so far this season. I expected the defense to have to kind of get their footing after losing some NFL talent, losing Blake Baker from the defensive coordinator position. But this offense should be better. And one of the reasons I feel like it should be better is because you lose Cody Schrader from last year. One of the best. He was the leading rusher in the SEC last year. Great story that guy was. Amazing season he had. And then you go in the transfer portal and you bring in Nate Noel from App State and you bring in Marcus Carroll from Georgia State. And everything's went well with those guys so far. And so that was like a big question for me was, can you replace a guy like Schrader? And while I don't think you fully replace him, you do the best you can do, I feel like, as far as replacing him. And you're running the ball effectively, and it's not translating to points. So something's up with Missouri. I don't know if it's red zone, kicking field goals instead of touchdowns. There hasn't been a bunch of games that I've been like, oh, I got to go watch Missouri football today with this awesome matchup. Felt like Missouri should have put it to Boston College a little bit more than what they did, and then playing close with Vanderbilt. You know, I don't. Maybe Vanderbilt's a little bit better this year, but there is absolutely no reason that you should be going to overtime with Vanderbilt, hosting them at home, and them missing a field goal being the way that you win that football game. Something's up with Missouri in this offense. They got a bye week to try to figure it out. They're going to have a few opportunities to work their way back up in these rankings. And look, Missouri is a team with an easy SEC schedule. You don't say that a lot, but they've got the easiest SEC schedule that I've seen, you know, of anybody this season and in recent memory, really. They might sneak into the college football playoff 10-2 or something like that, but I got to see something from this offense if I'm going to, you know, be able to like pick them to win a playoff game or something like that. We talked about USC. We won't go down that anymore. Miller Moss and Lincoln Riley have, you know, got some good things going, but at the same time, you know, can't run the football, can't stop the run, and that is going to be a recipe for a disaster in the Big Ten this year. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Southern Cal just has got to try to hold on for dear life and get through these Big Ten games and figure out a way to scheme around these lines of scrimmage, you know, getting blown up like they did this past week. I don't know what you do to do that, but, you know, that's why they pay Lincoln Riley the big bucks, right? LSU, number 15. I feel like LSU gets better and better each week. And I feel like we can say that about LSU over the last couple of years, actually. Start the season off with a loss. They've done that several years in a row. And I feel like this team is starting to figure out their identity a little bit. Brian Kelly has got to stop going for it. I don't know. All these coaches these days are doing all this analytic stuff, and Brian Kelly's one of them. Why are you getting paid $10 million a year to read answers to what play you should run off of a sheet of paper? Stop it. Kick field goals. Stop it. Play complementary football. Stop it. Blake Baker has got this LSU defense in a position to where they're starting to improve. They were able to shut out UCLA in the second half, and I get it. It's UCLA Bruins. They lost their coach. They lost a bunch of talent from last year. I totally get it. But that's not something that we've been able to say for LSU a whole lot over the last couple of years. Shut somebody out in the second half? That doesn't happen a lot for LSU here lately. Blake Baker is figuring out a way to keep offenses in front of this defense. And I think that was step one in a multi-step, plan to get LSU defense back on the map. It's not going to happen all in 1 year. It's not going to happen all in 1 year. This defense doesn't have the depth. They sure as hell don't have the defensive line. But Blake Baker's got these guys in a much better position, and they're keeping offenses in front of them. And that's a first step to having a solid defense and building a foundation on that side of the football. I think LSU is headed in the right direction. Slow burn. We'll see if LSU fans can stomach Ben Kelly over the next, 12 to 18 months while that defense is rebuilt. And then, I think LSU is going to be in a lot better shape. Always got a good offense here lately. And now the defense, you fill one hole in the boat with one finger, and then water starts coming in somewhere else. But that's college football in a nutshell for you right there. All right, let's zip through. Let's zip through some of these last ones here. Iowa State at 16, maybe the quietest undefeated team in all of college football this year. I mean, other than the Iowa game, nobody's watched Iowa State. There's going to be some bigger games coming up. We'll see. Matt Campbell has been there many a moons now, had opportunities to go other places and coach what I would consider to be better programs than Iowa State. He stayed there for a reason. Let's see if this season ends up being one of those reasons and Iowa State has a pop year. But as far as undefeated teams, they're one of the quietest in the country so far. Nobody's talking about them. We'll get some matchups with them later on this season. Illinois moving up into the 17th spot. Maybe I moved them up a little too far. My bad. I don't know. I don't know. Who do you know for a fact on this slide right here, 16 through 20, who do you know for a fact beats the other? And I'll wait. I mean, you can put it in the comment section, but I don't know. I really don't know. Illinois might be one of the worst teams on here. I think BYU probably is the worst team of these five, but Illinois is undefeated. They go into Nebraska on Friday night, and they beat Nebraska, held Nebraska to under 100 yards rushing. Now they've got their hands full with Penn State, so, they'll either drop down this week or they're going to move way up, again. Luke Altmaier back again this season. Pat Bryant, wide receiver, a career Illinois guy, having a really, really good season. We'll see what they can do. It's a well-rounded football team for Illinois. Right around 50th in the country in every single category known to man. So they're solid. How solid are they? We're going to find out this week. Clemson at number 18. Clemson absolutely demolished NC State this past week. And by demolished, I mean it was like 42-7 at halftime. Clemson fans probably be mad at me with this if they watch this. I don't, if you do, you let me know. I really like the starters on Clemson's defense. But if you go back and you look over the last few games, Clemson has given up over 30 points every game they've played. Other than, I think even App State, they gave up a pretty good bit of points. Look, I know it was second string, third string guys. I totally get it. I understand that. But I don't know. I love the starters on defense. The depth, I don't know about the depth. As far as the season, if they're going into the postseason and things, I don't know. We'll just kind of have to see. Maybe some of those young guys get that experience like they're trying to do now, and you're able to play them a little bit more as the season goes on because you're going to need them. You're going to need them. The offense seems to look a little bit better. NC State is a hard team to judge anything on. When we watched Tennessee play NC State, we thought Tennessee was winning the World Series, the Super Bowl, and the national championship all together. And then, we kind of figure out that NC State is kind of hot garbage at this point. So, it was a good win for Clemson. Don't get me wrong. That was a rivalry game. And Dave, how you doing? That was a disaster for NC State and his Wolfpack there. So I know Clemson fans absolutely love the beat down there. I don't know how much it proves about Clemson. I think that Clemson is the second or third best team in the ACC. That kind of depends on Louisville at this point. And I think we might be able to see those two match up this season. We'll see. But 19, BYU. BYU absolutely just surprised the hell out of Kansas State and all of college football country. They're 4-0. I mean, it is what it is. A big win versus Kansas State. We got to throw them up in the top 25. We can't just ignore teams that are undefeated because they're the bicycle college, the Mormon college there. Look, I watched them earlier this season and I was impressed. I can't remember who they played. It wasn't a great team, but I was impressed when I watched them. But Kansas State also served it up, and specifically Avery Johnson served this game up to BYU. Turnovers led to points for BYU, led to a big victory. Kansas State is not a play-from-behind football team. I think we figured that out this past weekend, something to kind of put in a mental note in our head for betting purposes later this season. Kansas State is not the team that's going to throw their way out of a deficit. And BYU was able to, like I said, make the most out of turnovers. I think they only had 200 and something yards of total offense. So do I think BYU's world breakers? No. Do we have to respect the fact that they just beat a top 25 team badly? Yeah, we do. And they're undefeated. So this is where we're at. You got to talk to your kids about the bicycle college being in the top 25. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Oklahoma State at number 20. I don't know why I don't know why, but I just feel like Oklahoma State is better than what they showed this past week. Now, Utah played some hella defense. We talked about this earlier. We've got Utah at number 10. We know what Utah is. They're a solid as hell football team. That just through and through, defensively, offensively. If they got Cam Rising, they're hard to beat. But Oklahoma State, it was hard to put your finger on exactly what the major malfunction was for Oklahoma State this past weekend. Alan Bowman gets pulled in the game. You bring in Wrangler, the backup quarterback. That was an absolute disaster. You bring back your starting quarterback back in Bowman, and he tries his best at a comeback. Wasn't able to make it happen. I don't know. Oklahoma State, they're so poor defensively, as at least statistically, yards and things like that. They're a bend-don't-break style defense. They've got Kansas State this weekend. They'll be traveling to Kansas State. Kansas State will look to run the football on Oklahoma State, just like Utah did this past week. The blueprint's out there now. The blueprint is absolutely out there now. We'll see what Oklahoma State, what kind of adjustments they can make, but kind of an embarrassing offensive showing this past week. But Utah helped to embarrass them a lot in that situation. 21 through 25, take or leave these teams. Take them or leave them. Look, I've got honorable mentions here, too. I'll kind of mention here in a second. And honestly, you could throw anybody in from the honorable mentions. I'd be all right with it in the 21 through 25. 21 through 30 is indecipherable. 21 through 30 or 35 is absolutely indecipherable at this moment. Anybody who says they know who would beat anybody, you're just lying to yourself. I've got South Carolina at 21. I think they're a decent football team, y'all. I know the defense is good, and I think the offense is going to get better week by week. And you're waiting to get your starting quarterback back, and Robbie Ashford's out there making plays for this offense. I think South Carolina's a decent little football team, guys. I just really do. They proved me wrong. They're probably going to disappoint as the season goes on. They usually do. That's just kind of Gamecock nature, I guess. I don't know. But you avoid Georgia this year, so that's always nice. No more divisions. So South Carolina, I think, has got a chance to kind of spread their wings. And look out now, but that game at the end of the season, Clemson and South Carolina, I think it's going to be a really, really good one this year. I hate to fast forward that far into the future because I don't want to wish any college football weeks away. You better believe it. But that's going to be a good football game. I will have my eyes glued to that one for sure. Notre Dame at 22. It's put up or shut up time if you're Notre Dame. You absolutely crapped on the back of your legs against NIU earlier this year. NIU ends up losing. They're out of the top 25 now. That was a horrible loss, obviously. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Notre Dame is really good at running the football. They're really good defensively. They have no passing game. We'll see if they can kind of work on that this week. If there's a susceptible part of Louisville's defense, it's the secondary, right? I think if a good, formidable passing team gets matched up with Louisville, I think you'll have some success through the air. Notre Dame's not that football team. Riley Leonard ain't that guy. They're going to have to run the football to the tune of 250 yards in that game to win it. We'll see if Louisville can slow them down. I think they can. Number 23, Kansas State. We already talked about him. Big loss this past week. Kansas State is still trying to get Avery Johnson acclimated. And I'm going to give, here's kind of my beef with this whole situation. Kansas State would be a lot better football team so far this year if they had Will Howard. I know nobody wants to hear that, but Will Howard would have this offense in a lot better situation than Avery Johnson has them right now. Because I'm gonna tell you why. Avery Johnson, first of all, young guy. He's made tons of young guy mistakes this season, tons of them. I've watched damn near every Kansas State football game all the way through. He's not there yet. Is he going to be a really good football player? Hell yes, he is. He is exciting. The legs are there. He's got to right now. He's just got to lean on his run game as the passing game develops. Kansas State also doesn't have any playmakers at wide receiver, in my opinion. I mean, just nobody to write home about. No NFL talent. So that's kind of a catch-22 there. Young quarterback doesn't have a go-to receiver, I feel like, to really rely on. Most of your touchdowns are to tight ends there. This offense is still growing. The defense, I feel like, has really stepped into form over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, you see 36-9 or whatever it was against BYU, and you think, damn, their defense let them down. No. The offense threw picks and fumbled the football. Kansas State defense held this team right around 200, 250 yards total offense for BYU. I like the defense for Kansas State. I think they're in pretty good shape. But the offensive play call, and it's all revolving around Avery Johnson right now, which is good and bad. You can use it in the run game, and that's great, but I feel like the playbook's limited with his young self starting there for Kansas State. And if you had Will Howard right now, I feel like Kansas State is undefeated. But I digress. He's not there. He's at Ohio State, so that's all part of the past at this point. Sorry if you guys heard that. We got side-by-sides flying up down the road over here in Georgia. Welcome to the country. Number 24, UCF. This is another one that you can, argue with me about. We're going to know more about UCF as time kind of goes on here. I can't wait to see Central Florida beat the hell out of the Florida Gators. You can't tell I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan. Florida Gators get the brunt of it. They're the point and laugh special of college football, in my opinion. So I always kind of base everything about kind of pointing and laughing at the Florida Gators. But Central Florida's getting ready to beat the stew out of them pretty soon. Central Florida had one of the best football games that we've seen earlier this season as they came back to defeat TCU. I mean, in serious comeback fashion, win that game by 1. I think Central Florida is a dark horse in the Big 12. Are they going to win it? No, I don't think so. But they're undefeated right now, and we have to respect that. And KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn, that seems like kind of like a match made in heaven there for sure. 25, Indiana. If you haven't been paying attention, Indiana's been beating the stew out of people. So if you're a betting person, I think it's all aboard the Indiana train. Now, they're gonna go on the road and play Maryland this week coming up. I haven't done them. You guys let me know how Maryland is. I don't know. I really don't know how Maryland is. I just kind of started tuning into the Indiana thing, and they're beating the stew out of people. Beat UCLA 42-13. LSU didn't do that. LSU didn't hold UCLA to 13. We'll see. We'll see. Betting purposes, bet them on the spread because they're winning people a lot of money right now. Honorable mentions: UNLV, Liberty, Rutgers, Pitt, Arkansas. I'll take Arkansas away from that for a second. UNLV, Liberty, Indiana, Rutgers, and Pitt. All those teams are undefeated. UNLV with the win over Kansas. Liberty looks like they've got a good chance of going undefeated. Those are your teams that you're kind of looking at as far as the non-Power 4 conference teams that could make the college football playoff. Rutgers, Indiana, they're going to take their losses. Pitt, they're going to take their losses, but they're undefeated at this point. So, they're right on the verge, and they're right on the list. They keep winning. They're going to be in the top 25 for too long. Boston College, Nebraska, Arkansas all have one loss. I think all 3 of those teams are decent. Boston College, the least of which. Nebraska, Arkansas, I think they're decent little football teams. I think Nebraska probably the best of those one-loss teams there. We'll kind of keep an eye on them. If Nebraska and Illinois played again, I'd bet on Nebraska again. I think Nebraska is a better football team, and I think it was not a great coach showing in that football game. Maybe we'll talk about that later when Nebraska plays somebody decent. But you guys let me know what you think. We're going to have a live show tomorrow night, Tuesday night, like we do every single Tuesday night. Come and join us. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video where you can come click it, follow on your smartphone, laptop, turn your camera off. Your face ain't going to be on the internet. It's only going to be your voice, just like a call-in show. Call in. Tell me how I'm wrong on this top 25. I'd love to hear it. A lot of this stuff's arguable. A lot of this stuff's going to work itself out, as I said. We've got preview and predictions tomorrow. We can talk about whatever you want on the show if you come on. And then we've got the betting show on Thursday. And then before you know it, we've got college football all over again for Week 5. Don't forget, go check out all of our matchup breakdowns, our early thoughts that we've released over the last day or so. Go check that out. And I'll see you tomorrow on the live show, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Everybody have a great day. For First and Long College Football, I'm Marcus. See you next time.